You're listening to an El Seminario production, a multi-generational, family-owned media company capturing conversation that reflects our communities since 1989. Whether we answer your questions or inspire new ones, at El Seminario, we speak your language. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the weekly issue El Semanario, We Speak Your Language podcast. In this episode, Breaking the Ice, we will explore the beliefs, values, and lived experiences that define who we are today. Together, we will unpack how these influences have shaped our views on mental well-being and what we've chosen to embrace or leave behind on our journey. Joining us today is Perla Duran, Ramon del Castillo, and Chris Fresquez. How are you all doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
How about yourself, Perla?
Very good. Thank you for inviting us.
How's your morning, Chris?
Yes, doing well. Thank you so much.
To get us started, if you can briefly share a little bit about yourself. Who is Perla Duran?
Perla Duran. So I'm Perla. I'm from Mexico. I'm a psychologist in Mexico, and I came to the United States in 2003. And at that time, Denver had like very limited number of therapies available. That was like more than 20 years ago. So I got the opportunity to get a visa to work here, and I've been here since then. Like I have the opportunity to work for different agencies, nonprofit, community mental health centers. And I'm here, and right now I focus on my own practice, which is called El Consultorio. And we are a unique practice because we only employ bilingual and bicultural therapists here in Aurora.
Thank you. Would you like to go next, Ramon?
Yes, I would. Good morning. I'm Dr. Ramon del Castillo. It's really a pleasure to be here. Nice to see everyone and to meet people. My background is pretty broad. First of all, I had the privilege of running a mental health center here in Denver from 1980 till about 1993 that was called El Centro de las Familias. And when I had gotten to that place, they had hired a curandera as an official health provider, which was unique in the country. The people had them come in for consultations, but never had hired one. And so I ran the clinic for about 13 years and had the opportunity to serve the community in Southwest Denver at that time. So I bring a variety of different skills to this kind of a dialogue. One is the actual management of a clinic, and then two is the actual practice of working with our community, and three, which to me is probably the most important, is developing a cultural perspective about mental health. And hopefully during this conversation I can share some of that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramon. And for those of you listening, I would encourage you to listen to our prior podcast where I had the opportunity to interview President and CEO Chris Fresquez de El Semanario. But in addition, would you like to say anything else in regards to quién eres? Who are you, Chris Fresquez, besides being El Jefe?
Good morning, Vivian. Thank you for the introduction. About myself, I will leave that up to our listeners to tune into the first episode of Generations. This program we are about to embark on today has been long overdue. For decades, we have seen a rise in mental health, and we have been publishing so many articles on the issue for more than 20 years. It has become a widespread epidemic within our society, and this has brought tremendous concern to us. This program, I hope, will create a dialogue to help us understand, direct, and find solutions. But most importantly, that we're not alone. No one is alone. First, I feel we must understand the history and what brought it to its current state. So I'm looking forward to the conversations. And again, Vivian, thank you, and thank you for hosting this program.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm very excited. Everybody in here knows que talking about la salud mental es muy importante. It is so important and very much needed in our communities. And so I'm excited for all of us to kind of explore and for me to get to learn about your perspectives, your beliefs, your values, as I shared in the beginning. And that leads me to my first question. And I'll go ahead and start with you, Ramon. And what does mental health mean to you, Ramon?
Mental health, in my experience in being in the field, we know that mental health has a stigma associated to it. Every time you use the word mental health in the community, people think that you think that they're crazy. So we developed this concept called mental wellness and other names to it. But for me, mental health is the balanced approach. That is that we deal with what we call holistic healing. We deal with the spiritual, the mental, the physical, and the emotional part of the human being to try to keep them in balance. For me, mental health means being balanced. That is, that one, I am very aware of who I am as a human being. I am very familiar with my culture. And then those two elements have helped me build what psychologists call self esteem. That is, how do you really feel about yourself? I think that's very important that people feel good about themselves, especially in the kind of society and the kind of history that Mexicanos and Chicanos and Latinos have gone through in this country and in the world. Secondly, is what coping mechanisms do I have? How much do I know myself, and what tools do I have internally that allow me to deal with all of the stresses in life to keep balance? What happens when I get angry? What happens when I feel down? How do I deal with it? I think building on those coping mechanisms is important. So I see that as very, very critical. And I may have mentioned this, but positive self-esteem, that I love who I am. I remember one time in doing training with Mexicanos, and I asked everybody in the group to name three things that they loved about themselves. And it was very interesting. The women, there was about 30 women and men in there. It was a family training, and the women got up and said, "I'm very proud because I have a good job and I'm working hard for my family." And that was so deep and so revealing to me that's how they saw themselves in relationship to the world that they live in. Two more pieces. One, I think, is developing problem solving skills. That is, I'm able to look at a problem, diagnose it, and work it out. But in addition to that, be able to ask for help when I need it. That's a very difficult thing for human beings to do, to ask, reach out and say, yo necesito ayuda. I need somebody to help me work this out. And that's critical in terms of mental health. And the other part is part of what we call the socialization process. That is, what have I gone through in my own life, and how many crosses have I had to carry? And by the way, how have I dealt with those kinds of problems? And then be able to share them with others about how I may have resolved a problem that they may be experiencing, and that we learn from each other. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, I feel like there is so much to what mental health means. And but on that note, what does mental health mean to you, Perla?
Yes, I'm gonna agree with the doctor. And to me, it's like a balance. It is like a skill. How well are you handling things? Because this is not like a set in stone. You have mental health or not. It's like a balance, keeping the right balance to interact with our social needs, with our physical needs, with our demands as a human beings. Either if you are a mother, a parent, a wife, how can you interact with the world? How well are you equipped to deal with things around any situation that we face through the day? So it's not in a study. It's going to change over time. It's going to change with the weather. It's going to change with like what kind of problems do we have in that moment, and what kind of activities we do. For example, today we all are recording for this like for some people this is a very triggering anxiety situation, and for others we may feel comfortable or not. So depends. It's like how well can we deal with the war in the unspecific moment.
I love that. And I'm all for it that there's no one way journey, no one way solution to mental health. And the way I see it as well is that I love the way you both put it into perspective that how well equipped are you and how are you going to manage it? You know, and I think getting to know yourself is already challenging. So it's like, okay, and we're always changing. We're like seasons. You know, I like to think ourselves and mental health as seasons. We're, like you said, changing, revolving, adapting, and etc. So
And
I love
growing.
that. Yeah, and growing for sure. And like you said, we're all in different pace. We're different paces in different areas in our lives, and so I think that really has to do a lot with where we are in our mental health journey or stage, because journey is like never ending. It's ongoing. I see some commonalities. We kind of, I feel like we share a lot of beliefs on that. I kind of want us, or would like for us to touch on this question because I feel like it's important, and I've heard that it's important to touch on the differences between mental health and mental illness. So, what distinguishes mental health from mental illness? Would you like to help us on that, Perla?
Sure. So when we talk about mental health, we are talking about a balance. Something is going on and something is working well. When we are talking about mental illness, is the opposite. Something is not working good, even though a person is equipped to handle life on a daily basis. Something happened and our balance go away, and we need to find solutions. To me, like being able to identify, I know people is scared to have a mental health diagnosis, but to me, identifying what is going on with a person is a good way to find a treatment for that specific illness. I don't know, let's talk about depression. Okay, I'm depressed right now. This is my diagnosis. And the good thing about depression, we have too many skills, we have too many techniques that can help a person overcome or deal with that illness. So, illness to me is like not being able to balance our daily life. And this can be, and it's not going to be necessarily because a person is weak. It can be because different reasons. It can be biological reason. It can be too many issues going on, a stage of life. Like it can impact any person for any situation at any given time, and we need to find help. And that's why we are here to do as a therapist. We help people to cope with those mental illness.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, mental illness is more when something there's different um, different things that can be interfering with our daily activities. When it's starting to become an issue of like it's not allowing us to move forward and continue with our everyday life kind of thing. Versus mental health could be more of like I'm feeling sad today, but it's not an everyday kind of thing. I'm just feeling gloomy because of maybe the weather, maybe something happened in my personal life, maybe I saw something and it like it's kind of more of that. So that's kind of like the way I understood it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. And as you say, like some people can be born with some predisposition to develop those mental illness because a chemical imbalance, because problems with attachment during their childhood. It can be many reasons, but most of us, we have the ability to cope with situations, and it's going to be periods in our life that we are not going to have the strength to deal with that.
Is there anything that you, Ramon, or Chris would like to add?
I would just add that we have to know ourselves through the process of living well enough to know when we're using our defense mechanisms to deny that something is wrong. And many times what happens is we're in denial. We feel it, But when somebody asks us, "Are you okay?" "Oh yeah, I'm fine," but you're really not. And you have to have somebody say, "Well, you say you are, but you don't look that way. You look a little down. Can I get you to talk about it?" So working through those defense mechanisms is important. I think for me, because of having worked in the field, we had to deal with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. In order to be seen at the clinic at that time, you had to have a mental health diagnosis. So part of what we did was diagnose somebody and then run it through our team and talk about it to see if we were on target and go back and maybe have to make adjustments. And that was kind of the the systems part that was difficult to deal with because it's not pleasant to tell somebody, "I think that this is what's going on with you," and that's where they built the stigma. So to me, mental wellness is being aware of who you are. Mental illness is a more severe diagnosis. Mental problems, just peeling down because you're a Bronco fan and they lost, to, "Oh, somebody in my family's sick and I'm feeling really down about it." That's a little deeper, and you need to help that person uncover that and then deal with it to then where it's uncontrollable. And that's usually when we were at the clinic that a psychiatrist might get involved and say, "I think that in addition to the counseling that you're going to get, that you might want to look at some antidepressants or something like that." So it gets real severe because mental illness can get extremely severe, particularly when you deal with the high level diagnostics like a personality disorder or bipolar or schizophrenia or some kind of other malady that might be going on. And that's when it gets a lot tougher to deal with. So what you want to do is what we used was a model called the PETA model: prevention, intervention, treatment, and aftercare, so that you always want to try to prevent it and know yourself well enough to use the skills to keep yourself balanced, but then be open enough to say, "I need somebody to come in and help me find out what it is that's going on." So uh, I worked to the state hospitals and in prisons where I've seen very, very mentally disturbed people. That was interesting. It was fascinating to me to try to say, "Wow, what is this?" And then personally, doing my own praying and saying, "God, give me the wisdom to understand what this is and help see what I can really do." It's a fascinating field, but it's also very stressful. So
Ramon, you
the
mentioned
therapist has to
something.
take care of themselves.
Yes, you, before I forget my question, you mentioned something that kind of leads me to my next question, and I think it's very important, and I'm excited for us to talk about it because you said, um, you mentioned something like it's important for us to get to know ourselves and also ask for help, you know, be willing and able to asking for help. And so that leads me to my next question because I feel like a lot of us could a lot of that could have been any beliefs or values that was instilled on us by a friend, family, or anybody, right? So um, that's my next question. Have any beliefs or values been instilled in you by your family, friends, or mentors? Perla?
Yes, of course. Like as I say, like being part of a specific culture injects values on you. For example, I'm a Mexican woman, and on my beliefs is like, okay, a woman should be, I don't know, in charge of a house. Even though I'm a professional woman, I still have like roles set up like for male and females. And I was raised Catholic, and I was into a very strict Catholic school for 11 years. So all the time when I talk to somebody or when I hear something, my brain goes in automatic, oh, that's a sin. Even though I don't practice that religion anymore, I filter most of the things because I learned that in my early years. And as Dr. Ramon was mentioning before, and I think it's a conversation that we need to keep moving about defense mechanisms, because I think it's something that is being left outside. So we don't know about denial, we don't know about other defense mechanisms that we use to protect ourselves to think about our problems. And I think that new generations don't even talk about Freud, don't even talk about other concepts that will help us understand the human behavior. But of course, everything we do it like, okay, es lunchtime, es la hora de la comida o del almuerzo. O sea, that's shape our behavior, that shape our culture, and how we see the world. Like saying, I'm okay, as a, how are you? I'm okay, is a very cultural response because you don't care and it comes in automatic. Even though I'm crying and I can see people in my office like crying, suffering, like with bruises in the face, how are you? I'm okay. As I say, that's a very dangerous question because if you don't want to hear about other people's problems, when you ask somebody, how are you? You need to be ready. Do you really want to ask that or not?
Yeah, what if I'm having like a mental breakdown and then you just come up and ask me, how are you? And then I just start pouring because I was hoping nobody would ask me that. You mentioned something that I recently started practicing and it reminded me because I was raised of like, te terminas lo que te serviste. Talking about food, right? Where like you have to finish everything that's on your plate. So I was raised with that mentality. But then I would feel guilty because I was too full. And then as a young adult, I wasn't happy with myself, you know? And then with that mentality, I'm like, well, I have to finish everything, right? And then I changed that. And it did affect my mental well-being because like, I mean, now I try to be extra cautious on how much I serve because I feel guilty of throwing food away, you know, because I was raised with that of like, te acabas todo lo que está en la comida. You must finish everything that's on your plate, right? That leads me to my next question because we're over here saying, hey, you better ask for help, right? But I'm hoping you guys are doing the same, right? You gotta, what is it? You gotta walk the talk, or what's that phrase? I don't know. Like, let's not be telling our listeners like, oh, like if you're feeling this, this, and this, go ask for help. So how do we do that? I know what resources rely on support your mental health and well-being.
Yes. For me, like what I do is I take mental health breaks. So I do things that I like. I disconnect from the world. I love to be, I used to be a party girl. Now I enjoy Saturdays and Sunday, close at home, like close my house and nobody comes in, nobody comes out. Because to me, that's the peace that I need. I need to unwind from the week. I need to use retrieve for myself and start thinking, relaxing so I can cope with life in the next day. I try to read a lot. I try to, now we are in a different era, so we try to watch podcasts, reading, videos, YouTube, TikTok, that enhance my skills because at the end, like being a therapist is not easy. We listen to the people problems all day long and I just need to unwind and be my better self to be ready for the other person who's going to come next Monday to talk about their problems.
How about you, Ramon?
Yeah, I do what is called self-inventory. Like, where am I at? What am I going through? You know, the way I do it is one, try to have honest conversations and ask people to be open to you and be able to go to somebody and speak with them when you want to. The other things that I do that are more personal is I love to shoot pool, and it's my therapy. And I love to write poetry. That's my therapy. I love to read, and that's my therapy. So, but then I also, when I'm in conflict, I'm not afraid to reach out. I have my brothers, my wife, to reach out and ask them, can we talk? Can I run something past you? I think that's so important because then what happens is it builds up inside of you and causes stress and anxiety, and then you wonder about it. And one of the things that as a Chicano male and you may not agree with it, and that's okay, was the whole question of machismo. My father was in the Marine Corps, and he taught us men don't cry. But we also had my mother who balanced that out, that we could go to and cry, and she would say, what's going on? So I kind of learned that. But my father was hardcore, and he said, no, you don't cry. So I think learning about yourself and being able to have the determination and have the ability to reach out and say, will you help me? I'm a man, but that's okay. I need to cry too, and I need to reach out and get support. So that's what I do. I mean, it varies, and uh, it's part of the process, I think.
I love that you mentioned that, Ramon, and thank you so much for sharing that because that is huge in our community, right? And so I think it takes a lot uh, for an individual to acknowledge that, and especially like, where are you in your machismo, Ramon?
Well, I've struggled with it because right now there's a continuum of what it is. Right now, I've worked with youth, and I've studied, well, Jerry Taylor's work on el hombre noble, the noble man in Aztec society, right? He did research through the codices in Mexico and came back, and he's worked using that model with men to make honorable men out of them. So I think that there are positive aspects to machismo and negative aspects. Now, my good friend who passed away, Dr. Elisa Facio, used to say no, that machismo was white man's patriarchy. And I don't particularly agree with that. I think that there's good stuff in there that we can cultivate and be honored. I'm proud that I'm a man. That's who I am. But I also don't use that to oppress people or to use it to hurt people. And I know, and I've had to learn that because of my father. My father saying, hombres no lloren, and here's how we are. And yet, knowing my mom saying no, and learning from her that yes, you can do that. So, I think we have a lot of work to do in our community. And
Yeah.
I mean, and that's something hopefully later on in these podcasts we can talk about some of the real stuff that's happening with our men, and I mean, I've seen it all in the time that I spent in mental health, working in mental health.
Te lo agradezco mucho, Ramon. I feel like that's something very important and that we will talk in another episode. So, so keep an eye out for that. So I just briefly want to mention that machismo in our community is so embedded and so rooted, right? So the way I think about it is like a lot of our Latino men were raised that way. And so imagine it was in your books, it was at your house, it was at school, that's all you were taught, the machismo and how to act upon that, what to say upon that, and etc. So it's embedded in them. So what I'm trying to say is shout out to those individuals that were raised that way, but now are unlearning a lot of toxic behaviors, a lot of toxic habits that not only harms themselves and their family, but their friends and everybody that surrounds them. And it's not easy. It's for sure not easy, but we love a trying man. Is there
Yes.
anything you would like to add?
Yes, and as you say, this can be a whole conversation and we can go weeks about machismo, but I think like Los Hombres No Lloran was safe first for somebody who wants to see somebody good. Because when we say Los Hombres No Lloran, to me means like, I want you to see you thriving. So as everything in life, we want to see like, we want the machismo keep going, but with a different version, with a machismo that is positive, that is true, that is well understand. As I say, like my favorite thing is we need to unlearn so many things. For example, when I went to the school, I learned that we have 9 planets, and later in life, I learned that we only have 8. And I need to adapt to that in as well with other part of the culture, with other part of the values, because at the end, as a human beings, what is our first goal? Is to have a good life. That's our main goal. Live in love and be around our family and meet our goals and reach what successful means to me. So we need to focus more on that piece and learn and unlearn what is working and what is not working for us.
I always say, and I have it in my quote in my social media because I just love this, like, never stop learning because life never stops teaching. I go by that all the time, and those who know me always get to hear that from me. Is there something you wanted to add, Chris or Ramon?
Yeah, I was going to say that I worked in the alcohol and drug abuse field as well, in that alcohol and drugs are help us release our inhibitions. And what's interesting when you see a man that really needs to cry, give him about 3 or 4 beers, and he'll be crying in his beer because the inhibition has been released. And you see him and say, ¿Qué está pasando? And they've got a lot of pain inside of them, and it's being released. What we have to do is teach them you don't need the alcohol to release that. You have to learn how to do it and feel okay about it. It doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you somebody that has understanding. So I've seen that, I mean, forever. So that's there's a lot of writing on that area. So I think that would be something to further develop and explore in these conversations with other folks that come onto to the stage with us or at
For sure, ya ven, ya escucharon a Dr. Ramón del Castillo. You don't have to take those 4 cervezas, okay? Do it, okay? It's so hard to be vulnerable. I mean, we could probably in another time, for fun, but not when you really need to let something out. Don't take control over yourself. Don't let the alcohol take control of you.
Yes, don't cope with addictions.
Yes.
Because that's just putting like a aspirin to the problem, but it's just gonna numb it, but it's not gonna heal it.
Let's stop numbing these feelings. Let's face our feelings. And it's really hard to be vulnerable, but okay, I'll leave it at that. There's something I wanted to share. Oh yeah. So for those of you that are listening, I would encourage you, honestly, highly, highly encourage you, take yourself out on a date. What do you like? I think we're so busy on like, what does X, Y, and Z like? Oh, let me buy them this when I stop by the gas station. Let me do this. You know what? Tomorrow, whenever you're listening, or today, take yourself on a date. Buy yourself something nice. Whatever you like. If that's reading, journaling, just zoom out, clock out, say, I am not available today, and I am available for myself today. Can you believe it's been almost an hour? We can go on, and thank you so much. But one of my second to last question for you all is, what are your hopes for the future of mental health care, and how do you envision a more supportive and inclusive approach well-being in the years to come? Can we start with you, Dr. Ramon?
I would say one, that we can reduce the stigma, that we can allow people to give themselves permission to say it's okay to go talk to somebody about how I feel. It doesn't make me a bad person or a crazy person. And the only way we're going to do that is by reducing the stigma. And that's why we've changed it to mental wellness and other alternative concepts. Number two, we've talked about it, encourage people to reach out and seek assistance. That doesn't make you bad, doesn't make you weak. All it means is that all human beings can become frail and need assistance and guidance and love and caring. The third thing is that as a community, there's a concept that I learned from Dr. Ricardo Carrillo. Ricardo Carrillo is a PhD psychologist, but he's also a curandero out of Oakland, and we've done work together we were invited to do racial healing in city of Taos for the city of Taos, and I knew him already, but then we got to know each other better, and he talks about evidence-based practice versus practice-based evidence. Evidence-based practice is what current mental health researchers and practitioners have. They have the books that tell us about what you need to do, right? And because we come from a culture and a history that there's been a lot of repression and racism and oppression, we haven't had that opportunity to build our own knowledge base. And that's what practice-based evidence is. That is things that Perla's doing with her clients. She needs to record them and write them. I've already been doing that. And that's our knowledge contribution, so that in the end, we turn practice-based evidence into evidence-based practice. And we can have our names on these books that are sold to everybody else. We need to develop that part of our knowledge, el conocimiento. And that's what I would challenge when I do work with practitioners, say do that, because you are offering something and there are kernels of truth in it. Start writing about it, and let's create these books and get our stuff out there. That's what I did in Chicano Studies.
Let's do that. Let's write books because I think that that's important. To me, it's like, just to answer your question, what is my hope is like we need to move to a prevention culture, because in order for somebody to use insurance, they need to have a diagnosis. And they don't let us work with the client and get reimbursement for the service if we don't say, oh, this person needs the therapy. Is not an option. My other wish for mental health is like, if you don't believe on it, give it a try anyway. We have tried many things. We have gone to many new restaurants to see like, oh, let me try if I'm gonna like it or not. Same with mental health. And I hope people understand better the magic of talk therapy, because when we talk about our problems, we are forced to condense it. When we have the emotions all over the place, it's like a puzzle with 5,000 pieces. And when we have to explain to somebody, either a friend, a therapist, a priest, whoever you are talking, is like, okay, let me try to put this on words, and the healing process starts from there. And when we are in distress, our brain completely works in different manners. So we don't know, like, we cannot see clearly what we are really struggling with until we have the other person that is going to reflect to us, oh, okay, so you are telling me that you are distressed because of this. And when we hear it from the other person, it's like, huh, it wasn't that complicated. So give it a try. Talk therapy, we need to understand and learn more about how our body works, because at the end, everybody here, we were talking about those quiet times. The body is really busy with thousands of processes inside, like in the brain, in the body, in the digestive system. It's like exhausting to be a human and work like many hours. That's why we get exhausted. So when we have this quiet time, we have time to debrief what's going on with our thoughts, what is going on with our emotions, and we give our body a break from thinking, which is amazing.
See, she mentioned it's hard being a human. I always say that, and people laugh when I say that. And I think I would love for you all to remember that it's really hard being a human, and our body is doing so much that we don't even see, we don't even acknowledge, and we don't even know the work it's internally doing. And to close our conversation, is there anything any of you all would like to leave our listeners with?
I will say relax, rethink what are your goals in life, and think how you want to get there, because at the end, as I said before, we are here to be humans, we are here to learn, we are here to have a good experience, we are here to interact with others, and we are wasting our life with other things that may not be as important as being like peaceful, quiet. When people say, I want to be happy, and I say, That's too much. That's too much. Let's learn how to be quiet and have realistic expectations that make us happy.
Thank you. How about you, Dr. Ramon?
Well, I would just say relish and build upon your relationships with people in your life. And two, because we're going to be facing this real soon, take care of the children.
Okay, well, just a friendly reminder that no one has the right to dictate how you should feel. Mental health is a complex journey with no single path or one size fits all solution. We want to remind everyone that you are not alone in this journey. As you heard today, being human can be pretty hard and navigating this life can be very challenging. We hope our conversation offered you something valuable, whether it was a new perspective or just having somebody or just with the or that you felt truly heard. Shout out to Caring for Denver for making this project possible. We couldn't have done it without you. And thank you so much for being here, Dr. Ramon, Perla, and Chris Fresquez. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I am Vivian Reyes, your new host, y nos vemos hasta la próxima. Gracias por escuchar.